I grew up really, really poor. And so I watched a buddy of mine whose dad was a lawyer and they were pretty wealthy. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to be poor. And so in Canton, they were either the wealthy people were car dealers and lawyers. And I was like, well, and doctors. I didn't want to be a doctor. I wasn't going to own a car dealership because I didn't know how. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll go to law school.
When you're driven, the need to accomplish a goal is relentless. Hard work and ambition compel you to do whatever's necessary. In my work as a personal injury trial lawyer for 18 years, it's common to meet driven people. Those with drive can have different personalities, careers, or backgrounds, but they possess one common factor. Despite their passions, driven people want to surround and motivate themselves with other driven people. If you want to learn how to overcome obstacles by learning from others, then tune in here. This is the Driven Crowd Podcast. Thank you for tuning into episode 80 of the Driven Crowd Podcast, fueled by Snellings Law. I'm your host, Scott Snellings. Today, I'm joined by Adam Plunk, CEO of Plunk Smith PLLC. Adam takes great pride in leading a firm that delivers high-level legal proficiency across a wide range of areas, emphasizing exceptional client service. He brings deep experience in estate planning, business and corporate law, venture capital, mergers and acquisitions, and high net worth representation. He also advises clients on executive compensation, asset protection, fund formation, and real estate matters, serving both emerging startups and established companies. Originally from East Texas, Adam graduated from Canton High School, earned his bachelor's degree from Albion College, and his law degree from DePaul University College of Law. Outside the office, he's a proud husband and father, music lover, loyal Dallas Cowboys fan, and Michigan Wolverines fan, an avid golfer, and an accomplished hunter. Adam, welcome to the Driven Crowd Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I don't know about you, it's always awkward to sit here and watch someone read my introduction.
It very much so is.
All right. So let's talk about kind of where you came from. Where'd you grow up and how did you get to where you are right now?
I grew up in East Texas. So I grew up in Canton, Texas. Mm-hmm. And then...
Trade Days Canton.
Yep. Worked there from one time I was 9 years old until I graduated high school, selling ribbon and lace. So it worked out pretty well. And it was pretty fun. Actually made money for a 9-year-old, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, it is nice.
But did that and then played football in high school, but ended up getting a full paid ride to go to Albion College up in Michigan. I'd never been to Michigan before, so I said, I'll go. So I went and had an amazing education. It was a great school. It was a small school, but the education was great. I knew I wanted to be a lawyer pretty young. And so Albion had 100% admittance in the law school.
Oh, wow.
Back then. I think they still kind of do. But so I knew I was going to go to law school. They had a public policy concentration you could do, political science, and then I had a philosophy minor just because it was all the other classes made up for that. So
sure.
Did that, then decided to go to college in Chicago, law school in Chicago, I guess, and went over there for 3 years and then came back. And so I knew I wanted to be in Dallas for my career. I just didn't want to go to law school here. So
the Texas kid going up to Michigan and suffering through several winters, it sounds like, before making his way back.
Oh, yeah. And I could handle it back then. I can't do it now. I go back in the winter now and I'm like, woo.
Yeah,
I'm not built for this anymore.
Yeah. I always tell people, man, give me the 100-degree days over the super cold ones up north. Yeah. I have no desire for that anymore.
Yeah, no, not anymore. So, but yeah, it was, law school was good. Was ready to get back. And I worked up there doing kind of what I do now, did real estate and corporate and a little bit of estate planning. And it's kind of what I've done my whole career. And it's just evolved into more sophisticated planning now.
So you have the people like you who have kind of grown up knowing, hey, being a lawyer is what I want to do. And you have the people like me who kind of fall into it at the last minute. I'm in college and never wanted to be a lawyer. Ended up at an internship that I just kind of fell into through hunting, actually. My dad was out hunting with the guy who offered me the internship. That's how we met.
Oh, that's cool.
And then ended up in law school. So what was it about you growing up knowing that you always wanted to be a lawyer?
It's funny. I grew up really, really poor. And so I watched a buddy of mine whose dad was a lawyer and they were pretty wealthy. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to be poor. And so in Canton, they were either the wealthy people were car dealers and lawyers. And I was like, well, and doctors. I didn't want to be a doctor. I wasn't going to own a car dealership because I didn't know how. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll go to law school. And so that's why I became a lawyer. And so I went there and what I thought I would do as a lawyer evolved. I didn't know as a kid, do I want to do transactional or litigation? Didn't really know the difference.
Right.
Just as I got older, I worked around older people who had businesses. My mentor in college had done a bunch of 1031 exchanges on real estate. And so I enjoyed doing that with him and helping him run his buildings. And, I remember once he had a tenant he had a restaurant, and the tenant walked the lease. And so I had to go in and clean out this restaurant and bar. And we ended up clearing it all out, and we sold the building to a bank, and he 1031 and bought these other buildings. So I was a part of that with him in college. I was like, man, this is kind of fun. Mm-hmm. And I learned a lot about things that were legal, not even knowing it. I didn't know that. I didn't understand 1031s. I didn't realize how much the lawyer was involved in those type of transactions. And so it just kind of led to, when I got into law school, I happened to get a job as a clerk at a firm that did a lot of real estate and corporate work. And so enjoyed that. They did a little bit of estate planning, and I got to understand it, making sure that entities were owned correctly by the trust and all that. And it just evolved into that. And I was like, I knew I never wanted to do litigation. And I wanted my clients to want to call me, and my business partner, Court, he and I have this conversation all the time. His clients are forced to call him. Something bad has happened that they've got to call him. For me, they call because something good's happened. They want to start a business. They want to, bring on a partner. They want to go buy something. They're excited about what they're doing when they call me, which is what I like.
That is a really cool dynamic. Obviously, I am more in Court's camp. Nobody wants to ever have to call me as a personal injury attorney.
No,
it's funny that you say that, because I can't tell you how many of my friends that I graduated with, or just other lawyers that I know, ended up in their practice area because that's just where they happened to get their first job. They had zero interest in doing, commercial transactions or construction litigation or even personal injury. That's just where they could get a job. And then they kind of got their foot in the door and started learning about it. And it was like, hey, I actually kind of enjoy this. But it was never really occurred to them that that's what they would end up doing for the rest of their career.
Yeah, it's hard to know, right? I mean, when we were kids, information was hard to come by.
Yeah,
right.
You had no internet.
Yeah, you had to actually go read it in a book or a newspaper, which was hard to find. And so you didn't know what people did. I didn't know about financial advisors. I didn't know about accountants. I didn't know any. I didn't grow up in that world, and so you just kind of know what you see. And now I think kids are different. They have much more access to information, and just on Twitter and Instagram or whatever, and learning about stocks, bonds, whatever. It's so easy and so fast. My son, he knows exactly what he wants to do, but it's basically because he's been exposed to it so much more than we ever would have been.
Absolutely.
So it's interesting.
Yeah. I've always had the opinion that I think it's incredibly unfair to ask some 18-year-old kid to go pick a major. Right. We're dealing with this even today with my 18-year-old. And it's incredibly hard because they haven't experienced anything. The jobs they've had have probably been in retail or something along those lines, some minimum wage or service job. And how are they supposed to know what they're interested in and what they're really good at? And they have access to all kinds of information like what you were talking about, and aptitude tests and things like that. But even still, until you actually do the thing, I think it's incredibly hard to figure out if that's where your passion really is.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why they need to work more.
Amen.
I made my son do a bunch of different jobs and even work with me to learn to do some stuff, just to see if he even wanted to do it. Work our farm, help me build stuff, just even go to my office. And he's like, I don't want to be a lawyer. I don't want to sit in an office all day long behind a computer. He's like, that's not what I want to do. But he had to have those experiences to know.
Absolutely.
My daughter has worked in a law firm for 3 years. She doesn't want to be a lawyer. She wants to be an architect, but she's comfortable in an office. It doesn't bother her. She likes the environment, which an architect's going to be in the office a lot more.
Right.
And it's important for her. And, a lot of kids nowadays, they don't have to work, and you can tell, even the ones we hire, these younger kids that come out of school, even lawyers who've never really worked, they don't even know how to act in an office.
Yeah.
Court and I have that conversation all the time. We're like, man, this intern has never had a job before. And it kind of shows, they'll do weird things like sit at the front desk with the receptionist during the day. You're like, hey, you can't do that. You got to go to your desk and go work. But they just don't know. they don't know office etiquette because they've never done it before. So,
man, wow, that is.
It's interesting.
It is interesting. Yeah. And it's a dynamic that I don't think, most of us had. I mean, I always had jobs growing up and all my friends had jobs growing up. And even if you didn't have to have a job, like you weren't helping the family, you were still doing it because you wanted to go buy stuff, right? You wanted a car or you needed to pay insurance or gas or whatever it was. And so that's a really interesting dynamic. Tell me this, how do you think your background, you described yourself as really poor. How do you think that affected who you are today?
It gave me opportunities because I was so poor I had to work. So I went to work very young. I mentioned earlier, my first job was selling ribbon and lace, and at First Monday. But also I worked for my grandfather on our farm, and then I even worked for an environmental company, digging holes and taking soil samples at a very young age. But I learned a lot about the construction world. And then in college, the guy I worked for, he owned those buildings, but he also did a bunch of construction. And so he and I did construction together. Well, now I represent some of the largest construction companies in Dallas and their owners. Well, I understand their business.
Mm-hmm.
I understand tilt wall, I understand electrical, concrete, because I've done it. I've actually laid concrete before. I've been a part of that. I've run electrical. So I think it helps me relate to the clients better that I'm not somebody who has no idea of what they actually do for a living. And it's really helped me grow our practice because it's relationships. When you understand what they're doing, you can relate to them, you relate to their stresses. It's more helpful. And that's what I tell all the people I hire. I'm like, listen, you need to go work somewhere so you actually know something about business before you're going to tell a business owner what to do. And that's where I've been blessed. I've done a lot of things in life. I've worked a lot of jobs when I was younger before I became a lawyer, which helped me relate to all these clients we have today.
I think that's a fantastic point. It's really hard to trust someone who hasn't done the thing that you're hiring them to consult you on, right? I remember when we were looking at potential EOS implementers for our firm, entrepreneurial operating system through the Traction book, Gino Wickman. One of the requirements was I want an implementer who's actually run a business, because once you've done that, you just have a different mindset, right? You've been through the things, you've had to be the one to make those tough decisions, because until you're emotionally invested in a business and having to make those decisions, I don't think you can ever understand all of the factors that you have to consider when making those tough decisions. Just like in mastermind groups, it's kind of easy to watch someone get up there and start talking about a problem and provide solutions because you're not emotionally attached to it.
Yeah.
But as soon as it's you up there, and then you hear this advice of, you got to fire that person, or you got to spend money here, or you got to do this. Okay, logically that sounds right, but it takes a lot of emotional toll or risk to go implement those things.
No, it's 100% correct. I had this come up a lot. We do a lot of M&A work, and we get brought in by private equity groups to do what's called their tuck-in acquisitions. So they'll go out and start a healthcare platform. Let's say it's an oral surgery platform. And they'll acquire one or two with Kirkland and Ellis or the Goodwins or these big national firms. And what happens so often is those big firms can't really close these smaller tuck-in acquisitions. And these acquisitions can go from $2 million to $15 million. But there's smaller acquisitions where the sellers, they're doctors or plumbing companies, whatever those acquisitions are, and they're all S corps and they've been run by individuals that run their business their way.
Right.
They don't run them like a publicly traded company. And so what happens all the time is these big firms, the lawyers that are on them who are extremely intelligent. I mean, we're talking Harvard, Yale, all those schools, but they've never worked in day-to-day businesses. And most of their transactions are, hundreds of millions of dollar transactions, billion-dollar transactions, which are very different than your $2 to $3 million transaction because of who the seller is. And so we get brought in because we understand the seller. I run an S corp. I know what it's like to run a small business.
Exactly.
And I can relate to what we find when we go through their due diligence. Okay, hey, they've got this, they've been paying their nephew for the last 4 years. Well, I know why they're doing that.
Yeah.
I'm not
taxes.
I'm not all freaked out about it, but you'll get these big firm people who freak out about all these little things. You're like, hey, listen, that's just normal doing business. It's going to go away under the new structure. Mm-hmm. It's fine. We're not going to lose sleep over it, but it's really helped. And we've literally had PE groups come to us and go, hey, we need to move away from this bigger firm because they don't have the touch with the sellers that we need to be able to close these transactions. They're too rigid in how they see everything because they're so used to doing it for a publicly traded company, which in those cases, some of that stuff, it's really a big issue. In ours, they're not that big of a deal. We can work around them and come up with a solution. And so being a business owner is the major reason why I understand it. And that's what with my staff, I'm like, hey, you need to think like you're the owner of these businesses. It'll make you close the transaction better and more smoothly.
Yeah, it's, I've had the same discussion with a banker, right? He does stuff. He does like commercial loans with S corps, and he understands. Oh, I see what you're doing here. This is the Augusta rule. This is supper money. This is bringing the kids in and making sure that money's going into their IRA or whatever it is. They understand that, and they understand that's not real expense, like that can't be backed out if you had to back out.
Yeah.
And so, it's super important. Every single person that comes on our team, as part of their orientation, we talk about, hey, everything we do is about relationships. And obviously relationships with our clients, hugely important. Relationships with OC, opposing counsel, relationships with adjusters. You go on LinkedIn and you see all this, chest pounding about, I took the other side to task, whether it be opposing counsel or an adjuster. And I'm like, why are you doing that? Are there times when you need to stand your ground and disagree? Absolutely. Can you do so respectfully? Yeah. Why would someone want to work with you if you're a jerk?
Yeah.
There's zero reason to be a jerk to anybody. Now, do we lose our cool sometimes? Sure. But in the grand scheme of things, if you can create those relationships in every aspect of what you do, that's going to do nothing but serve you. I can't tell you how many opposing counsel and insurance adjusters have sent work our way because they know that we do things the right way, that we treat our clients well, and that we do a good job.
And you want the deal you want it to close, whatever it is, right? You want it to actually finish.
Yeah. Hey, if I can work hard with an adjuster and develop that relationship, and that allows us to close the case for our client sooner and for really good result, why would I not do that?
Yeah.
It seems boneheaded, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And so one of the things that I read in your intro was your focus on customer service or the client experience. Tell me how you go about developing that client experience.
Well, I mean, for one thing, it's responsiveness. So I get a lot of clients that have gone to other firms and sent emails saying didn't get responses back. So I have built my team around being responsive. I'm a very busy guy, but I have my assistant, Nikki, who's she's on my emails. She sees them. So there's two of us always able to check that, to get back with clients. If there's an emergency, I might be in a meeting for 2 hours, but she can see the email or the text message. My signature block and my cards have my cell phone on it, so they can get quick access to us so that we can be responsive. And a lot of times for clients, it's not that they need an answer right then. They need to know that you're thinking about them.
Yeah.
That they ask the question, that you've seen the question and you're thinking about the answer. And that to me is most important. My dad told me years ago, he's run title business his whole life. And in Texas, title rates are dictated by the insurance commission. So there's the fees are the fees. And he said, the only thing that I can do different from any other title company is just be better at customer service, be responsive, be available. And so that's what he's always done. And it's kind of the same thing in the practice of law. There's a lot of really good lawyers out there.
Absolutely.
Our job is to just be responsive. And if you do that, you'll grow dramatically. And that's what I stress to my staff across the board. Look, customer service matters. If someone's unhappy, let's talk to them. Let's figure out what it is. If somebody needs something quickly, let's get it done. You can't do that all the time because you can't always put someone in front of somebody else. But when it's an emergency or when it needs to get done, and we get it done. And our team knows that. And we've been blessed to grow consistently as a firm since I started it. And I think that's the reason, because my referral sources tell my clients, hey, he's the most responsive lawyer you're going to talk to. And that's what I try to do. I mean, my clients text me, my text messages start at 7:00 in the morning. I may have 2 or 3 phone calls between 7:30 and 8:30 in the morning before I ever even get to the office. And they're little things. It's a little answer. Hey, I got this question on this. I'm trying to buy this. What should I do? What industry should it be in? Little stuff. They can move on with their day, and I've answered their question in 30 seconds. But they're never going to go somewhere else because they know if they need something, they can call me and I get back to them.
Yeah.
And that's what's so
spent
important.
The time, effort, and energy to develop that relationship, right? Because at the end of the day, it's all about trust.
Yeah.
They know that you're going to protect them, that you have their best interest in mind, and that you're going to respond to them. And to your point, it is so easy to respond with an email or text message like, hey, got your email, got your text. Let me think about this. I'm going to get back to you. And then what you've done is you've just taken that stress off of their plate. They know that it's in your court and they don't have to worry. And that's huge. So one of the things I'll recommend to you, maybe you've already done this, but have you ever read the book Unreasonable Hospitality?
Mm-mm.
Okay. I'm going to send you a copy. Nick, will you help me remember to send Adam a copy of Unreasonable Hospitality? You're going to read that and buy a copy for your entire team. It's amazing. It's about a restaurateur and how he created this amazing customer experience at one of his restaurants.
Okay.
And
nice.
So our team's read that book and we're working on implementing Unreasonable Hospitality in everything that we do, from our marketing the very first time that they see us, regardless of what platform that's on or whether it's a phone call, all the way through after our case is closed and we continue to keep them in our sphere as former clients. And a lot of times those transition into referral sources too. And so it's an amazing book. And anybody out there listening, if you have any input on customer service, which if you're working somewhere, you do, would definitely recommend that you read that book, Unreasonable Hospitality. The author's name's slipping my mind right now, but absolutely amazing book. So talk to me about entrepreneurship. You obviously are an entrepreneur. You worked for a firm. What was it that made you take that leap from kind of the safety of a firm to starting your own?
You know, the funny thing about it was the commute. That was the triggering factor. Is I was working down in Preston Center and I was driving from Frisco, and I was late to everything at home. I couldn't make a parent-teacher conference on time for my life. I mean, I'd leave an hour and totally be shut down. There'd be a 9-car pileup on it. And I finally was like, something's got to give. And so I started thinking about it, and, it's like, I've got some good clients. Hopefully they'll come with me. Frisco's, this was in 2012. So the downturn had happened. It's like, I think, there's a good market up there. I'll see what happens. And I had really developed my relationship with a lot of the clients I worked on. And so when I decided to do it, the guy I worked for sent an email out to every client I worked on saying, hey, Adam's leaving, but I'm here to take care of your work. Don't worry about it. Well, about 1,200 of them responded back and said, hey, take my file. Because I had taken the job from a guy that had been there about 10 years. So these clients most of them didn't really know the other guy, or right. They did know him. They really hadn't dealt with him much at all for 15 years. Mm-hmm. And so when that happened, that made it very easy to start the firm, which I was blessed. I was surprised and blessed and grateful. And
probably a little overwhelmed too, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I was. It's funny is those clients, I still do a ton of work for a lot of those clients because they were business owners. And this morning, I'm dealing with one of them that's been a client of mine now. I mean, I started the firm 13 years ago, and that client was, he's probably 20 years. Well, 19 years I've been working with this client.
Wow.
So I know everything about him. And so we have a great relationship. He's getting ready to retire and transition to his right-hand person. So we're doing that transaction. It's kind of fun to see it evolve into it. But I spend a lot of my time out getting to know people. I tell my staff all the time, I'm building relationships. I'm not the guy that wants to walk into a room with 300 people and give a card to 300 people. I don't believe that builds relationships. So I'm pretty intentional with my time. I'll do lunches, dinners, golf. I want to know people. And honestly, I try to do a really good job of referring business out to referral sources, but I have to know them.
Right.
For me to refer you or refer a CPA or financial advisor, I need to know that they will actually fit with my client. Not just as they send me business, but my client will actually fit with them and they'll fit with them. And so we spend a lot of time doing that. And I mean, Nikki, that's one of her primary tasks, is making sure that when we sit down with a client and we're talking to them and they need a CPA or a financial advisor, or they've got somebody in their family got in a car wreck or a criminal issue, during that meeting, she will send out the emails making the introductions to those people immediately. So It's by the time the client walks out of the meeting, they've already gotten the email, hey, here's your introduction to the CPA that'd be a good fit for you. And by doing that, it triggers that relationship a lot faster, because they're immediately, that CPA can respond back, hey, happy to help you. You want to jump on a call? And because I know that's the right fit for them and what I'm trying to plan for them, it works really well. The client feels good about it. And then we are all three working together as a team to help that client.
Yep.
And so I think that's probably why I've been as successful as I have been, is by having those referrals out to people and thinking about my referral sources and getting them business. They send me business back. And it's because we all know what each other like and how we are. I mean, there's a client that's probably not a good fit for one CPA group. There's another one over here that's a good fit. And I know they're a good fit. I had a client just last week. She needed a new financial advisor, and she needed a kind of someone that would really care about her, but she wanted a female financial advisor who would kind of understand her lifestyle and just kind of the things that the way she works. And she needed someone who would really pay attention to her. And I knew immediately who I wanted to send that to. And they've met twice. She signed up with her, and they're already close because I knew who I wanted to refer her to, because I actually have a relationship with her. I know her and I know how she is. So I knew she'd be good with my client, versus just trying to stick, square pegs into round holes.
Right.
I don't have to do that. So
isn't that such an amazing feeling, being able to connect two people? And it's a really symbiotic relationship. I absolutely love that. One of the things that strikes me about your business development, we'll call it that, is the strategy behind it. So many people do quote unquote marketing with not much strategy behind that. And maybe they have a marketing director, maybe they have an overall plan, but I'm talking about being very intentional with your personal network and nurturing that network, going to events or lunches or whatever, and really being curious about that person. And in your mind, not just being like, okay, what can this person do for me? But no, what value can I create here in this relationship? How can I help this person best? Maybe it's sending them a book, but maybe it's introducing them to somebody over here. Or maybe it's providing value by giving them recommendations on whatever it is that's important in their life that you have some knowledge about. Maybe it's just being an ear to listen to. And I think when we strategically approach our network, and I don't mean this in an inauthentic way, but biz dev should be fun because you're developing relationships with people.
Oh, absolutely.
And when you look at it from that perspective of how do we develop relationships with people and add value to them, I love being the one that can add value first. I love sitting down here and being able to push out social media posts of this podcast and provide value to you. I enjoy that. And so when we can do that, I think that's super important. And once we have people recognizing the importance of actually developing a network, then I think having the ability to strategically grow your network and not just scatter shoot and never follow up and that kind of stuff is incredibly important.
Oh, it is. I mean, the follow-up is huge, right? And continuing to build those relationships. I tell people all the time, I'm like, man, if I have a lunch with someone for the first time, they were introduced by somebody else and it just kind of fits. I mean, I just kind of like this person.
Yeah.
I tell them, I say, listen, I'd like to build a relationship with you. I want to live life with you. I want to maybe hunt or golf or whatever it is that is our connection. If we do that together, you're always on the front of my mind.
Yeah.
Right. If I go, man, this is a great fit for whatever it is, even if it's an electrician. I've got a guy who does all my tenant build out. Well, I've lived life with this guy. So when a client of mine calls me and is trying to get their they leased a strip center space for a restaurant or whatever it is, and they're trying to get that built out and they're struggling. I'm like, hey, you got to call him. You're never going to be disappointed. And I know that because of my relationship with him, he's going to bend over backwards to make them happy. I've never had a client complain about this particular guy, and he's probably finished out 30 of my client spaces.
Yeah.
I've never had a lawsuit. I've never had one of he's never been sued by anyone he's worked on their space, which means I know he's doing a good job. Now He's had, there's people who aren't always great customers, but he's never had a lawsuit related to it. That means a lot. And I can tell my clients, I'm like, listen, I've never had to deal with a lawsuit where somebody sued him because he didn't do something right. So I know he's going to do a good job for you. But I live life with him to know. And he and I are very close friends to where if I've got a client that needs something done that, wasn't within the scope, he takes care of it. But that's a relationship. And it's, that's what's so important in our career. And as you get older, you hone those relationships even better, and you really figure out who you can trust and who's the right fit.
I feel like as you get older too, you realize just how important relationships are, right? When you're younger, you're out there, you're trying to make your way in this world. And a lot of times you're more focused on yourself, on your career, on, trying to develop a family. And as you get older, you realize the importance of, hey man, we're all designed for relationships. I don't care if you're an introvert. I don't care what your background is. We are all designed to have relationships. So maybe some people have more close relationships than others, but it makes life so much more fulfilling when you can connect with other people.
Oh, absolutely.
So let me kind of go back to you starting your own law firm. How did you approach growth?
That's a good question. I get asked that a lot.
Or how did you deal with growth, right? You kind of have different pathways there.
Yeah. It's one of those things. When I started the firm, I was busy pretty quick, and a young man hadn't been out of law school very long, came to me and goes, hey, and this is during the rough times, like things really hadn't picked up yet. And he asked to come work with me, and he came to work for me just contract basis. And it didn't take long for me to get him pretty busy. And I was like, so I raised his pay and had him busier and just kind of grew. And when he would come to me and go, hey, I'm about out of capacity, I'd hire someone else. And there was never this, hey, we're just going to hire. And it was also scary because you have enough work for the two of you. You're getting to that point where you're struggling to do the things you want to do, or be as responsive as you want to be. And so we'd hire someone else in hopes that we could keep them busy. And it kind of worked that way. And then when Court and I partnered together, he does a bunch of work with Whataburger, and he goes, man, I'm pretty busy already. I didn't think I was going to be this busy this fast. And so we had to hire someone, and it was like, okay, we don't know sure how busy we're going to be. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh wait, we need to hire another one. And it just kind of happened like that. Yep. And it was never, hey, we're going to get to this number in the future. As we've grown, we now do summer clerkships. And so we actually are very intentional about that. We made 3 offers we had 5 clerks this summer. We made offers to 3 of them to start next year, because they just were a really good fit. Some summers we don't have as many strong candidates, or their first years or whatever. Right. But, now we're a little bit more intentional on growth, because we're projecting where we're going, and as we've grown, it's easier to do. But when we were young, people kept going, well, how big do you want to be? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, as we get new clients and we get more work, we'll hire enough people to do it. Finding the right fit is always hard, especially with senior attorneys. Finding the ones that kind of fit your culture and everything else. I've been blessed. I've got some really good people around me, but it's hard. I mean, you have to really look and find people who want to do it your way. But, and I don't know where we're going. People ask me all the time, how big do you want to be? I want to be as big as I need to be to take care of my clients.
Yeah.
So whatever that takes,
Yeah, that's very similar to how I typically answer that question too. Is, hey, if we're blessed to continue to grow and we're working through our marketing, our relationship development, and all these things, then we'll be as big as we need to be to really take care of people. And I think it's so hard at the beginning because you don't really understand, like, there's no track record.
No,
you don't know like what your good months are going to be and bad months are going to be. You don't know how quickly you're going to be able to, for me, resolve specific kinds of cases. And so it's really hard to put together the report that says, hey, we think that this case is worth about X and that it'll resolve about at this point in time. And as you get bigger, you have more data.
Yeah.
Right. And obviously data has become way, way bigger, especially with law firms now that are getting more business savvy. So on that point, actually, I'm going to jump gears a little bit. You get to see a whole lot of S Corps, business owners. What do you see in the really successful ones that are different from the ones that are good, but not great, or just not quite very good?
Oh, that's a great question. I look at some of my clients that are very, very successful. I think those that are very successful know how to delegate, and they delegate to the right people. And most of them understand the value of the customer. And so they're, like we talked about before, customer service is huge for them. Whoever their customer might be, right? It doesn't matter if they're a construction client, if they're, digging ditches, they're building houses, or if they're building roads. How they treat their customers really, really matter. And then those that treat their staff pretty well. So what I see is, people who aren't greedy are the ones that are generally most successful. So when you start a business, if you understand that you're the last one to get paid and it's okay, and you want those that work for you to be well taken care of so they don't want to leave all the time, and you don't blow your money on jets and hangars and fancy cars in the first year, you'll generally be more successful. Those that, are thoughtful in how they pay their taxes and put reserves in the bank and prepare for rainy days, those are the clients that are going to be successful. And it doesn't really matter what they do. Because as I tell my kid this all the time, cream rises to the top. So, you're just going to be, those that work hard and who really pay attention to all aspects of the business and they're not greedy will be the most successful. And that's one of the things we try to do at our firm. I think we have better benefits than most firms. When we give everyone a toll tag, because to get to our office, you've got to get on a toll road.
I like that.
I mean, you've got to get on 121 or you got to get on the tollway. And, for a 21, 22-year-old who's driving up to answer our phones, if they've got nowadays what the tollway does to people, I mean, it can cost them $1,000 a month. If you're coming in from Aubrey or even down here in Addison or something like that, that's a hard pill for a lot of them to swallow. So we try to do things like that and are thoughtful about their life, not just our dollars. And so I think those are the clients that are very successful, and you can see them right from the get-go. When those clients that come in that you can just tell they're trying to make as much money as they possibly can and take as much as they can for themselves, they're not going to last. They just don't, because you can't keep good people around you doing that. And most of them end up with tax problems because they spend more on things they shouldn't be buying without paying the IRS. And they think they're going to make the money the next year to pay the IRS for this year. And some little glitch happens and it destroys them. And I see that probably 3 or 4 times a year with people who have great ideas, great business, but they're too greedy. And it shows.
And doing what I do, we see a lot of that. We see a lot of law firms that I think, they put money into either ego marketing or just flat out ego, buying nice cars and big houses and all the things without having a capital account or paying their employees well or things like that. So 110% agree with you on those fronts as well. Well, Adam, like I told you, this was going to fly by. We're down to our last question. And I always ask everybody, give me your top 3 books that you would recommend or that are your favorites.
Well, you should have warned me on that one. I'm not a big reader. I read a bunch of legal stuff, unfortunately. I was a political science major. So one of the books that stood out to me more than anything, I was a freshman in college when I read it, was Adam Smith's, I think it was the Guiding Hand or something like that. And it basically talked about how government should be kind of guide you in the direction you should go, not dictate it. And so that resonated with me my whole life, even how I run the firm. I try not to be too much of a micromanager. I'm trying to guide my team, but I don't want to just tell them exactly what to do every time. I want them to grow. So that book's probably one that stuck with me. Plato's Republic was a good one when I was young. Man, I'm trying to think now. The Bible, I guess.
All right, yeah.
I've read it a few times. Yeah. Mostly, in things on how to treat people. And then I think that's, if you treat people that you work for you and that your clients and all that with the respect and the love that they deserve, you generally can be pretty successful. So I think those are what have helped our firm.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Adam, I appreciate your time here today. And for everyone tuning in, we'll see you next time at the Driven Crowd Podcast.